This is the Let's Talk About It podcast.
Well, what is going on, everybody? We are officially back.
What's up? I've missed being weird with y'all.
Man, it feels good to be back. How we doing, me and more?
You know, we are doing.
We're doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? We're doing good.
We're doing good.
We're
I
doing
like
good.
it.
We're
I
doing
like it.
good.
I like it.
Guess who's back? Back again.
I'm sure you guys
Juby's back.
remember Juby singing.
Let's celebrate.
Oh, man.
I bet that sounded really good in your ear.
It definitely sounded something in my ear, that's for sure. You look good.
Thanks.
Yeah. I can tell you said it in a way that you didn't believe me.
I did. It's because I got the winter dry skin going and the winter blues. I haven't gotten my vitamin D today.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, it was a little frosty today.
A little. Like I had my car going for like 10 minutes and it was still cold. And I was like, this is not it.
Oh, man.
This is not it. But no complaints because we get 11 and a half months of summer.
Come on.
So I will take the 2 weeks of cold that we
Yes, 100%. 100%.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to be back with you. Wherever you guys are tuning in, we drop brand new episodes every first and third Friday of the month.
I'm glad you remembered that.
Again. So I know everyone's been wondering, like, where in the world have you guys been?
But have they really?
What is going on? I mean, I've gotten asked that question actually quite a bit.
It's like when influencers, like so many people have asked me about this one. Did they though?
So let's go and dive in. Where have we been?
Well, man, where do we go to? So we'll go to March, April timeframe of last year, which, by the way, I think the last time we recorded, I was wearing this exact same sweatshirt. There's a really good chance. So we're full circle.
No kidding.
Moment. I think I was actually wearing this. I don't know.
Yeah.
My memory is not that good. So at March, April of last year, you and I started having some conversations about just the podcast and the future of the podcast and where we want to be headed, what we want it to look like, what we want it to feel like. And we kind of got to this place where we're like, we're actually not happy with what we're putting out. The content was great, but other things felt a little off. So we're like, okay, so what was the purpose of this podcast? And, you know, for those who are joining us for the first time or the first time in a long time, Mark actually kicked off Let's Talk About It podcast. I came in much later once I became unemployed. But Mark kicked it off because he was in seminary and he was just learning a lot of great things. And there was a huge chunk of him that felt like I have no right to hold on to this information. Like, this is information that needs to be, you know, put out to the world. And at the time he had a couple of interns that he was teaching. And it went from, okay, how can I get it out to a wider, broader base? Because you can meet with a lot of people in pastoral settings and pastoral counseling, but it's nothing like a podcast setting, you know, where you record it, you put it out, and it's available to anyone at all times, you know? So that's how Let's Talk About It started, was let's put out what, you know, he was learning in school and make content out of it, not for cash flow purposes or anything like that, just simply for the fact that we wanted this information out there. And it became about like, hey, let's talk about the things that like we're really curious about, you know, the things that may not be talked about from the pulpit on a Sunday or whatnot. So it kind of expanded and I came in and we kind of went in like a relationship, but also let's still talk about it perspective. And it was going great. You know, we were growing, thankfully. And we've gotten great feedback, but we just weren't happy with what we were putting out. So the original plan was take a month or two off and just reassess what we want to do. And so that's what we did. We had every intention of putting out a video saying what we were doing, but like we never got around to it. So we took a couple of months and we revamped a lot of things. We bought new equipment. We upgraded from some other stuff. We learned. And I say we, but really Mark, he took the reins on a lot of that.
But you brought a lot of great ideas though that helped. I felt like that gave me permission to kind of branch some things that when you were talking about some of the things of, what are some things that we weren't happy with? Just being frank, for me, I wasn't happy with the production of it.
Yeah.
I wasn't happy with how it looked for you as our viewers, as the audience. And
not even as an excuse, but like we are in a limited space right now. We're in an apartment, which is just like literally maybe 50 square foot over 1,000. And so it's like 1,050 square foot total. Behind the camera, it is a hot mess. Like I wish you guys, like we've had to just shift stuff over. But again, like there is so much we can do with the given space, but we wanted to make sure with what we had, we were still putting out a good
experience.
Yeah. Not even like a decent, like we wanted it to be good. We wanted it to be like when you watch something like, oh, I like that, you know? Mm-hmm. And I know we have a long way to go, but I think we just kind of
off to a good start.
Yeah. I'm looking around. I'm like, I think we're off to a good start,
Yeah.
Until summertime comes along, and I don't know what we're going to do about the darkness.
The aesthetics. we're trying. So shout out actually to you. Like when you can see the cars like behind the background. I was like, ooh, babe, that's a nice little vibe. Just, small little things like that. But all that being said, it matters to us. It's not just about the content, but we want you to have a good viewing experience. We want you to have a great listening experience. And so in addition to that, what started off with as a temporary break for us to kind of just take a step back, and we even consider actually changing the name. Actually, we went through so many different things. Like
oh my
really
gosh,
do a name change.
I totally forgot about that.
Like different logo, colors and all that. And as we went on, the other thing that we were doing is we were doing a lot of personal growth. GB was doing individual counseling. We started marital counseling, which has been great. Mm-hmm. I was in a 1-year group coaching program. And by 1 year, meaning once a month, I would meet with a group of 10 people from 9 to 5. It was literally an all-day thing. And I would get one-on-one coaching as well, which is different from counseling. So all that being said, we were just doing a lot of things, which was great.
Yeah.
But we also recognized we saw some unhealthy things, as well as maybe not even so much unhealthy, but things that we just brought more awareness to ourselves. And because of it, it felt like a lot to deal with, honestly.
It was, I think, like behind the scenes, there was just a lot happening. And I know for me personally, there was a lot happening, and I needed the time off to be able to just figure out what I feel like the Lord had asked of me in the beginning of the year, last year, and how to carry that out. And honestly, that did require that I didn't come in front of the camera and just like, oh yeah, let's talk about it, Mm-hmm. And of course, like that's stuff we can talk about later. But I think what started out as let's rebrand turned into like Lord kind of doing a rebrand in us.
Ooh.
And a lot of things were being dug up, and then the summer of 2024 came, and our life just kind of blew up, in multiple ways,
Yeah.
When I think over 2024, and I'm just like, man, we lost a lot in 2024. Like, we lost relationally, we lost financially. There was health stuff that we were going through. So yeah, it started out as a podcast rebrand, went into a personal rebrand, and then it just kind of, which I feel like the Holy Spirit knew what he was doing, you know, like I feel like what we went through in the beginning was just like setting up the foundation for, you know, when things did kind of get, you know, went upside down a little bit over the summer.
Yeah.
So with that has come a lot of questions of the number one being, it's like, are you guys still at that church that blew up over the summer? And I want to be like, which one? Because let me tell you, North Texas was wilding out this past summer. The churches in North Texas were wilding.
Oh my gosh.
Like, but yes, we are still at one of the many churches.
So before we get into the details of that, let's give a little backstory between everything that's happened. So we planned on coming back, essentially. Oh, look at that. Well, there you go. Alexa, stop.
We didn't even say
What did
her
I
name.
say? I mentioned her name.
We didn't say her name.
You know what? I'm actually going to keep that in. That was funny. So one of the things that happened, we had planned to come back in June. I do remember that. We were looking at coming back in June.
Yeah.
And so one of our very good friends, Craig, he had come back from a whole month sabbatical. And since we came back, we spent time with them that Friday night, I want to say.
Yeah, he came back on a Tuesday.
Right.
We ended up spending that time with
That's
him
what
on
it was the Tuesday
night.
Okay.
And then we saw him again on Thursday.
Yes.
At Matt's 40th.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Got it. Yes. Okay. So all that happens. And of course, if you guys don't know, if you've been living under a rock or something.
I was going to say, well, to say who Craig is, he's the person that Mark worked with the closest at his job. So the weekends that he's off, Craig is the one who's on. And the weekend Craig is off, Mark is the one who's on. They are both GXPs at the, you know, same campus. They are some of our closest friends here. They're in fact like the first like close community that we had once we moved here.
Yeah.
Craig was the one who always made sure the way I've described Craig is he was the glue that kind of kept all of our like
community
our group together, because he's the one who would always send out the group text message of like Friday night train ride or like coffee date or want to come over for some coffee and some desserts, you know. So it's this constant open invitation. And you know, you like I grew up in a household where you don't impose yourself, you know, to other people, but like Craig was always
yourself.
like, come over, let's do this, let's do that, let's do a Bible study together, you know. So Craig is not just a friend, he was a close friend. He was a dear friend and someone that we both loved and adored immensely.
Yeah, so we saw him that Thursday night before Father's Day. And
then we were supposed to see him on Father's Day. Yeah.
And so over the weekend, we attended Gateway Church, and over the weekend is when those allegations came out about Pastor Robert. And we didn't know, obviously, what was true and what wasn't. And so Monday morning comes, and I received a phone call, you know, from his wife about 5:30 or so in the morning, basically just saying, like, hey, something's wrong. And so we go over there immediately, and we see there's fire truck, ambulance. They're already working on him, trying to resuscitate him, essentially. And so they wheel him out because they couldn't get a heartbeat. And so I go with Mon, his wife, to you know, basically wait whatever's going to happen. And then you stayed back, you know, with the boys. There are 3 boys. And you know, since I'm in the waiting room with her, and doctor walks in, and we get told the news essentially that he doesn't make it. Yeah. And so that was just a moment that really just hit obviously all of us. It was not something that I'm just being honest. I went in with the mindset like, okay, he's coming back. He'll be fine.
I think we all did. I remember when you called me, and I thought you were going to say, oh, he had to go into surgery, you know?
Yeah.
And I remember driving over to his house and like so casually telling you like, oh, he went to the steakhouse last night. He probably has really bad heartburn and we'll probably just drive him over to the hospital so they can just kind of do a workup on him, you know, like not even considering the worst case scenario. Like that was not a possibility because this is Craig, you know, like you don't like, I don't, it's funny because just a couple of days before I just remembered having this flash forward of our life when we were in our 50s. And I remember very specifically thinking, man, when I am in my 50s, Craig and Monashak are going to be the people, like, they're still going to be our friends, right? Yeah. I mean, Monashak still is. But, you know, like, when I had that flash forward in my life mentally, I remember seeing them, you know, being like, they're the friends that are still going to be a part of our life. So it wasn't even a possibility that it was anything past a heartburn. Yeah. You know, like an intense heartburn. So yeah, that I would say like that stung more than anything else that happened.
So yeah, so with that, we had to watch our friend process, you know, the loss obviously of the love of their life. We had to watch their boys as well process, you know, the loss of their dad. And throughout that day, I'm making a lot of phone calls and having a lot of conversation. And you're being present, you know, with her, obviously. This is all the day after Father's Day on that Monday. So that was that day. And then Tuesday is when we received this message, hey, everyone come on into All Staff Chapel, which essentially is, it's bringing all of the campuses together under one building. Because it said they have, you know, an urgent announcement. And that's when we heard the news that everything about Pastor Robert was true, and that he had resigned. And as I was on my way there, I remember looking over at the passenger seat, and up until that point, every staff chapel I'd gone to had been with Greg, and that was the moment where it broke. Yeah. And I remember, when I say broke, probably a good 10, 15 minutes. I mean, just sobbing. The way rest of it to there. So all that literally happens in a 36-hour time frame. And I remember coming home to you that night, sitting on the floor right over there. And you were sitting on the couch right there. And you asked me, how are you? And I said, I just missed my friend. I just, you know, lost it. So that was all like mid-June.
By the way, a huge shout out to Pastor Jordan Hansen. I really appreciate how in the midst of all of this, the words of advice that he gave us, because everyone had so many opinions, especially on how we should conduct ourselves in this manner. You know, us as individuals should conduct ourselves in this manner. And I'll never forget, of all the opinion pieces that came into our inbox at the time, Pastor Jordan Hansen was the only person who said, if you can, stick it out, weather this storm, and walk through with your community. He's like, press in. He's like, I understand this is a hard moment, but press in and see your community through if you can. Yeah. And I appreciate that so much.
For sure. No, 100%. Thank you, Jordan, man. Something I do think is worth mentioning, though, and we'll go into because people want to know, why are you still at Gateway? And we'll get into that.
I was going to say something, but it's not appropriate, so I'll keep it to myself.
Good job. Self-control.
It's inappropriate.
Good job. Self-control. But one of the things, I will say this because I understand people want to know what it was like. It was painful. It was hard. And not only that, it wasn't just hard for us as a staff, it was hard for his family. We live on a very busy street, y'all. It is what it is.
Welcome to that apartment life. At least we don't have the birds fighting now.
Yeah, right. But to answer the question, it was very hard. It wasn't just hard on us as a staff. It was hard on his family. Harder because truly nobody knew.
Yeah.
From his family to, most of us on the team. And it was extremely disorienting. And I'm not just talking as someone that's on staff. I'm a part of they. So when people go them, I'm them. Like I'm Gateway.
Yeah.
I'm not ducking it. Was there a moment of embarrassment? Yeah. Is there still a form of that? Yeah, for sure, like 100%.
Yeah.
At the same time, I think what was even harder for me is there's people there that's been there 10 years, 15, 20.
Mm-hmm.
And just to watch them see how hard, and the disappointment, the grief, the anger, the sorrow. All of it. It sucked. And then to have the same conversation multiple times during the weekend service. And I remember being at the Welcome Center. We call it Connect Center. It was like our Welcome Center. I didn't leave through all three services.
Yeah.
Literally just conversations and, people grieving and upset and furious, and every single feeling that people are experiencing is completely justified.
Yeah.
And so to that, one of the biggest things that I remember sharing with our leadership team, our high-level volunteers, we call them deacons here. The biggest thing I shared with them is, number one, and I think this is appropriate in any type of crisis. I didn't think it was going to be like a little mini leadership class, but I do believe when a crisis happens, number one, if you're a leader at any level, you have the responsibility to, number one, affirm people's pain. You got to affirm where they're at. You can disagree with whatever they land on or conclude, but the greatest feeling for any single human being to feel is to be seen and heard.
Yeah.
And so I was very intentional, as best as I knew how, not just to do that, but also speak that into others.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, create a space just to hear people. Just let them get it out.
Yep.
Because we had a lot of differing opinions on that, and I won't actually get into that. But number one, we got to affirm people's pain. And number two, my thing was, I'm not actually in the business to convince anyone to stay or leave. I was in the business of convincing people to go to the Lord and see what he has to say. And that is what I did.
Yeah. That's what we had to do for ourselves.
Correct. And to be honest, we had a human moment. Like, we were both like, did we miss it?
Yeah.
And to your credit, the first thing you said was, okay, let's go back to what the Lord said. And you said, God called us to Gateway, not the leader. And you looked at me and was like, is that still true? You're like, fair. And then after you said that, I went, okay, let's see how they respond.
Right.
And so one of the biggest things I've learned in this experience is, I shared this with people, so this is, I guess, going into the question, why are we still here? Health is not, even when you just look at the human body, health is not just the absence of illness. Health, or at least the willingness to have it, is the recognition of something that is unhealthy in your body, and then you're doing your part to expose it or remove it. And so, huge shout out to our leadership, along with the elders who are still there. And yes, other people have been removed since then. But the people that are remaining, what they've done is, everything they've done has been to expose, to reveal.
Yeah.
Not to cover up.
Yeah.
And
which has been such
very common
a refreshing look.
Yes.
Into how ministry should be done, because oftentimes when crises arise, it's more like, oh, let's not put out our dirty laundry. Mm-hmm. That's the reality of it. Like, who wants their family's dirty laundry out, And it's like, there was a few weeks there where literally it felt like every single week it was something new. Mm-hmm. And I am so thankful for leadership who was just like, all right, we're just going to stand out here and continue to air this out and air this out and air this out. Mm-hmm. they have gone as far as putting the bylaws on our public website, just being like, hey, this is the bylaws. So it's been so refreshing to see what it's like to have leadership that won't just be yes people.
Yeah. Well, it's the reminder too of, I'm not going to hold people accountable. I'm not going to come at you or come at someone for you not knowing something.
Yeah.
But once you recognize you know what you don't know, what's the next step that we're doing from there?
Yeah.
And that's what's been encouraged. So number one, we went back to the first thing the Lord told us.
Yeah.
Props to you.
I was going to say, the
Number
Lord
2.
never called us to a person. Like, and I knew that from the beginning because people were so impressed by the name of when we said we're going to Gateway. It's like, oh, wow. And I'm like.
Now, I do want to be clear on something. And I actually do stand by this. I do think and believe that he was a ridiculously gifted, not just speaker, but
teacher.
Our lives, with the short time we have been here, our lives have benefited from his teachings. And I want to be, and I stand by that.
Yeah.
That's not me removing responsibility for what he has to walk through.
Yeah.
And I hate that for him, and even more so, I hate it for his family. And like, two things can be true. So I grieve what has happened, what's taken place, and at the same time, our lives have absolutely been blessed by his teaching, 100%. By his understanding of Scripture, by his ability to teach it and how he's taught it. I'm still living in the fruit of not just what he's taught, but we're still living actually in the fruit of his actions, honestly.
And it just goes to show the Lord can truly use anyone, right? Because we are also living in the fruit of some other seasons of our life where it was extremely hard, harder than this in some cases. Yet I look back and I say, for all that cruddiness of that season, I still walked away with XYZ, And I think that's the bigger picture is, it's the saying, you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You don't throw away the good that's happened because of something bad came out. Like, I was listening to a song today, and I don't listen to this person or any of the newer stuff that they've put out just because of scandals and all of that that's come out. But it still doesn't change the fact that when I first heard that song that I was listening to today, I knew where I was. And I knew what it carried me through. And the season I was in, I was a brand new believer, or rather I had just rededicated my life to Christ, and I was relearning a lot of things about, God and worship and all of that. And his music was something that played a very pivotal role. And when things about him came out, I didn't say like, oh, sorry.
Right.
And that's when you go back to, I'm glad I worshiped with you and not you. And oftentimes people get in this place of worshiping the person that the God has put in place instead of with them and the message they're bringing, like Paul even addresses that in the beginning of 1 Corinthians. He's like, some of y'all say y'all for Apollos. Oh no, I rock with Paul. Nope, I'm only Jesus, or I'm only with Peter, and he's like, none of this is the answer. The answer is the gospel that we've brought. We are just simply servants of the Lord. Right. And he cause the celebrity culture has been around for, it's funny. I was listening to that today. It's like the celebrity culture is not a, modern terminology. It's been around since Paul's time, where people are just, in some sense, it was around with the children of Israel. They always needed we need a king. We need something,
What you're saying is there's always been culture where basically Jesus is not enough.
Right.
Like the Lord is not enough.
Right.
That's good.
And it is moments like this is the reminder that this is about Christ, and he uses flawed people, including myself. Let me tell you, when I tell you I am the least qualified person to sit here in front of a camera or speak in any room, like, I am not qualified. I am not formally educated in that way to speak about it. I have my sense of shame. I have sins, all of that. And the goal is not to look at this and be like, oh yeah, like that's who we're going to rock with. Like, no, you're going to rock with Jesus, but side note / side tangent.
No, that's good. Well, as you were talking, there's two things I did want to mention, or two things I wanted to speak to. One, how do we discern, when is it okay to leave and when it's okay to stay?
Yeah.
Because we've had both take place. Mm-hmm. We've had some people leave. We've had some people stay. And
I never need you to anyways.
Well, we need y'all.
Just kidding.
But so here's what I do remember. I remember during the first week, I had a conversation with two couples. The first couple, I'll say couple A, essentially came from basically they're a survivor themselves, and so, it was a great, probably 20, 30-minute conversation. And she expressed, obviously, a lot of disappointment and grief over it, but also said, like, hey, we're going to be taking this entire week to really press into prayer, see what the Lord has to say. And but thank you so much for calling. Thank you for this conversation. I really appreciate it. And so that was one. That was couple A. Couple B, of course, one of the spouses was just absolutely furious. Yeah. Again, every single
Rightfully
emotion
so.
that I heard, it like spot on. Like, it was a wide range from feeling betrayed to disappointed to anger. Anger is an understatement. Furies, I think, is the word I used earlier. Grief, sorrow, sadness. And essentially, Upton left, took his wife as well, but come to find out, the wife didn't want to leave. And so couple A calls me back and said, hey, thank you so much for the phone call. It's about a week later. And they said, but we've pressed in and we really feel the Lord, saying like our season is done. Mm-hmm. I said, man, well, I completely understand. I said, thank you so much for, this conversation. Thank you for also telling me. And it was just a really great conversation, mm-hmm. And so they left. Then the next couple, though, going back to couple B, didn't hear from them, reached out to them, didn't want to speak. And again, I understand the pain that comes with it. I say that to say both couples left. Yeah. And then the question becomes, which one, though, left well? And here's what I mean by well. Well meaning which one left with the Lord. And here's where I'm going.
With a blessing from the Lord.
Correct. And here's what I mean with it more than anything. When I hear that one spouse wants to leave and the other one doesn't, that already means there's a discord. If you were to tell me, hey, my wife is on board or my husband's on board, like, because in marriage, 2 is 1. Mm-hmm. And that was actually one of the things that I did with you. I said, hey, where are you at? Because I remember thinking to myself, I said, Lord, if my wife feels any kind of way, that to me is a sign. I've always believed that. You and I have said since day one in marriage that if one of us feels off in something, that will always be a sign. Because God will never call one without the other. Correct. One might receive an answer. One might receive clarity before the other. Mm-hmm. But God is not, in marriage, because 2 is 1, God is not going to call one without the other person going. So that was my concern for that second couple. It wasn't actually so much about them leaving as it was more about, are you guys on the same page? Right. And they weren't. So my point being, 2 couples left. Yeah. More than that, obviously. I was going to say, I'm using this example. but I'm saying one left with the release of the Lord and the other one didn't. And I said to say that was our struggle too. For months, I remember just going like, Lord, I need so much clarity right now. I remember just saying, like, if you're done, I need you to make it abundantly clear. Yeah. But if you're not, I equally need you to make it just as clear.
I mean, in fact, we prayed for a release.
Mm-hmm. And I went to you and I said, babe, what are you feeling? You remember what your answer was to me?
I don't. I'm sure it was something profound and smart.
It was. You said, babe, it's not that I don't have the feeling or the emotion or the urge. You said, I just don't feel released.
Yeah.
That's what you said.
I can say it with so much confidence. There's not a lot of things I can say with a ton of confidence, but I can say that with a ton of confidence. Because one, we asked the Lord, if you're done with us here, let us know. Mm-hmm. We have no attachment to this apartment. Mm-hmm. We have no attachment to any of our belongings. I am okay with selling it and seeing where the wind takes us, kind of thing,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we have stayed in places beyond our season that has caused heartaches, but we stayed because there was security there, mm-hmm. And so when we got to this moment in life, we're like, no, we're not doing that again. Mm-hmm. So Lord, what is it that you want us to do? And I remember we were on a flight to Illinois, and I don't usually fall asleep on flights. It's really not my jam, not very comfortable.
Well, for context, this was the same week when our friend passed, and
so we're just kind of carrying.
So it was we did not sleep well at all.
Yeah,
that entire week. So
we were on our way to Illinois for Craig's funeral. And I remember it didn't feel like I dozed off because it felt like I was still awake. Mm-hmm. Because I could still hear everything that was going on around me. Mm-hmm. But I guess I had dozed off. And as I was dozing off, 2 hours had gone by, mm-hmm. And which felt like 10 minutes, like 2 hours had gone by. And I could hear the captain saying, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be landing soon. Please put your tray up, And I'm all like, oh, yeah, I didn't even fall asleep. I can hear everything, But so as I'm about to come out of this dozing off / awake state, I hear the words rebuild, help rebuild.
I totally forgot about that.
And I just remember, even before leaving, I was like, Lord, what is it that you want us to do? What season are we in? Mm-hmm. This is very confusing. Yes, we want to stay, but we don't want to overstay our welcome. Mm-hmm. And if the cloud is moving, we're going with the cloud. We're not trying to chase it later. We want to move with the cloud. Mm-hmm. So I remember, in my spirit, I heard those words. It's first I was I just kept hearing rebuild over and over again. And as I was coming out of my sleep, it was help rebuild. Mm-hmm. And so it's been 8 months. I still don't know what that looks like, but I knew part of that meant being a supportive spouse to my husband who is on staff, and not saying well, I'm done with this place. You better find something else and we need to move, I knew there's nothing I can do because I'm not on staff. I am.
Well, even for us that are, there's, within your range, essentially.
Yeah. I am.
But it's what can you do?
Yeah. A basic level volunteer.
Correct. What is it that you can do within the thing influence that?
Right.
Yeah.
And I knew that meant staying. Mm-hmm. So I remember waking up and I looked at you and I was like, we're supposed to stay. We're supposed, I don't know for how long. Mm-hmm. I don't know if this is a 1 month rebuild thing that he's telling us, if it's a 2 month, if it's 1 year, 10 years, I don't know. But right now the Lord wants us to stay.
Yeah. You know? And it's funny, in the same breath where for us, we received the word rebuild, in the same season for others, they received the word release. Mm-hmm. And that's actually what makes this whole thing beautiful. So I remember saying this to my leaders, do not demonize anyone that leaves and do not romanticize anyone that stays.
Yeah. I was going to say, we're still friends with people who left.
Correct. Yeah. Correct. And guess what? They're not out of order. If you've been released, that's the biggest thing. If you've been released by the Lord, don't go anywhere or do anything where you are not covered.
Yep.
I remember the illustration I have for people is I felt like there was this fork in the road. Mm-hmm. And I remember someone asked me the question. It was actually in my coaching group. And she said, do you feel like you weren't surrendered to the Lord and you were asking for it? And I said, no. I said, I actually can tell you honestly that I was fully surrendered to the Lord. It was, I will do whatever you want me to do. I just need you to tell me, make it very obvious. Mm-hmm. That's where I was at.
Yeah.
It had nothing to do with like, I don't want this. No, it was just tell me.
Yeah.
I will go in whatever direction you want. If you want me to stay, I need to make it clear. If you want me to leave, I need to make it clearer. Mm-hmm. Like, that's what it was for me. And so I said that to say, in seasons like this, really just a crisis. Maybe you're not going through this with the church, but maybe it can be a personal life, back at maybe within your family, the workplace. I don't know. All I'm saying is, in the midst of a crisis, you have to you really got to give yourself plenty of time to process. You have to process, you have to grieve, you have to feel. And there's a difference between processing it, feeling it, expressing it, and then dwelling in it and staying in it. Those are not the same thing. And so then I started, we already said it, we were doing marital counseling, and I started individual counseling. And through that process, I ended up learning other things about myself that was completely irrelevant to what's taken place the past few months. And so
irrelevant or relevant?
Irrelevant. Like, it wasn't relevant.
It wasn't?
No, I'm saying, like, when I went through counseling, a lot of stuff that was brought up was not relevant. It was irrelevant to,
okay.
Some of it was.
Yeah.
But that's my point. That's a gift actually of a crisis if we allow it.
Yeah.
Like, a crisis doesn't just bring up matter of fact, Pastor Yoakum, he said this. He says the hardship as well as the gift of a crisis is that it actually does two things. It brings up the initial thing, of course, but the second face of it is that it starts to unearth other things that were already there, but we just didn't pay attention to. And so it becomes an opportunity to essentially do the hard work to lean into some other areas that maybe we didn't do that before. And so that to say, it's very simple. We're still at Gateway because the Lord hasn't released us, and he's told us to. Yeah. Just as much for the same reason people who have left, they were released, for those who did it right. And so my encouragement to you at any point in time, press into the Lord. And equally, if you're married, I actually think it's easier to make decisions when you're married because 2 is 1. When I feel I want to go left and you go, we ain't supposed to go that way, I'm like, okay, bet.
We stand here till we figure it out.
Correct. Like, yeah. It really has made it that simple for me.
Yeah.
It's that simple because I remember one pastor said, like, guys, listen to the voice of the Holy Spirit. And oftentimes he sounds like your spouse. Like, it's so true. And so present to the Lord.
Your Holy Spirit sings a lot too.
Now, granted, of course, people can go like, well, what if, it's a different situation? Like, what if the leadership was doing, something? Got it. That would have been a different story. Hence why I said, going back to the second thing, we went back to the first thing, the first word that the Lord said. But the second thing was, it said, let's pay attention to the response. Yeah. So hear me. I'm not saying stay in a place that's unhealthy, or that will put you in some type of harm. I'm not saying that at all. Yeah. That's why I said pay attention. Just watch for how leadership moves. Pay attention to that. Yeah. And what I'm saying is, if they are doing the right things, if they're doing everything as much as they know possible. I remember I used to tell myself,
and keep in mind too, sometimes, like, one of the things I kept telling Mark was just like, man, our board of elders are doing a phenomenal job.
They are.
And they're not pastors by trade. They are businessmen. And this is also the first time they're going through something like this. Mm-hmm. So they're putting this together and figuring it out and making sure we're getting the right response and we're doing the right thing the first time alongside us. So there has to be some grace for that as well.
Right.
What I appreciated was their openness and their willingness to say, like, hey guys, we're also learning with you, but we are not leaving things covered up.
Right.
Let's put it all out there now.
And so, like, what I was going to say is, to that point, when I used to have soldiers, I would say, I will never ding you for not knowing something. That's unfair.
Yeah.
You don't know. The moment you realize you don't know and don't do anything with it, we got a totally different issue. And I feel like that's exactly what our elders and our leadership team is doing.
Yeah.
And I couldn't be more proud. Now, granted, this is, we're talking off of what we know. Okay. So unless something else is brought up that we don't know, then fine. We might have a different opinion, but from what we've seen, from what we heard, from what we know, along with people that we personally know that know the individuals, all the way up to our elders, that's what we're going off of, you know?
Yeah.
And so needless to say, that's why we're here. And so I will say, as hard as this season has been,
I was going to say, and this is just up until July. We still have August, September, October, November, December to go through.
Well, that was kind of, I would say that was the most of it, but I mean, then I had
like
a couple.
what we were. So all the while, all this is happening, we're planning a trip back to Nepal because that place has our heart. Planning a trip to Nepal. A few weeks after everything goes down, I get a phone call from Mark, actually a text message from Mark, and he pretty much tells me that one of our really good friends, in fact, they were in our wedding. She was one of my bridesmaids, and Jordan, he was a groomsman. Their little brother just out of nowhere, like completely unexpected, passed away. Like he was in the middle of playing rugby and
5 days short of his 30th.
Yeah, 5 days short of his 30th birthday. He passes away, so we fly back out to California for that. And then once we come back from Cali, Mark starts showing some stuff with his health, like some things started being presented.
Some chest pains.
Yeah. So we had to do 2 ER visits.
EKG, chest X-ray, blood draws, all that.
A couple of cardiologist visits and all of that. All of that to say, because of that, our global team didn't necessarily feel comfortable sending us to the mountains of Nepal, where it's a little hard to get, like medical service if something were to happen. Like the one thing I do love about our global team is that they do have so much of it covered. Like there is like an emergency 911 that you can call if you are stuck in the middle of nowhere, and they can deploy people to come and get you. But after like really praying about it and considering it, it's just like, man, that's just a big chance to take, to go out to the mountains of Nepal with no answers of what's going on with your heart, And then I started a group that pretty much left me wrecked, starting in September?
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much left me wrecked in September. I started taking classes for some certification stuff. So what was supposed to be a month and a half, 2-month break is now brought us into December. Oh, how can we forget? We celebrated 10 years of marriage.
Hey, that's right. We did. We did.
In the middle of all this.
10 years.
Oh, and also Mark was in a car accident and
no, we don't celebrate that.
So yeah, he was in a car accident and his car of 16 years was totaled out.
Yeah.
So he has a new baby now.
I do.
But
that was in November.
So it felt like it was one thing after another. After just when you think you're catching your breath, it's like no,
And then even a month before that, in October, I swapped units for good reasons. But I was with my last unit for 7 years.
Mm-hmm. Between Nashville and Louisiana.
Yeah, and so it's just been a season where, so when we say loss, we truly mean loss. We've lost. We lost our lead pastor. We lost a good friend. Lost another friend through some of our closest friends back in Cali. Lost familiarity.
Lost financially.
Yeah. Just through all the different things, from the health stuff and.
I think the one thing we gained though, like, because I'm sitting here like I'm going through the list of losses, and I'm just like, I was gonna say lost spiritually, but I'm like, but we didn't.
No,
we gained so
100%.
much spiritually.
100%.
I was just reflecting on 2024, and I'm like, my God, this could have, like, it really would make anyone go like, this is not worth it.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like the Lord was very kind in keeping us, and he gave us a firm foundation just from past experiences and things like that. And even on the hardest day, it was very evident that the Lord was with us. Like he hadn't abandoned us in the middle of the storm, or seemingly abandoned us, right?
Yeah.
But you could tell, like, even on the hardest day, like, man, like the day we're sitting in our living room bawling our eyes out about what's taking place in a 24-hour time frame, and you could still feel that, like, but this is not the end.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, you're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you could feel the nearness of the Lord. So I think, like, I know we gained spiritually what we lost in everything else.
That's good. That's good. I don't know if you remember when we were celebrating our 10-year. We were on the, the patio, just kind of reflecting over the past few months.
Mm-hmm.
And we slowly kind of started reflecting over just like the things we were thankful for. You remember the word that came to mind? And we were thinking about like what the Lord has kind of done for us the past year. Remember the word I said?
Mm-mm.
I said, despite all the hardship and pain, God, you still have us covered.
Mm-hmm.
And the irony was I was asked that week to speak to our team. We always do a group huddle before we go into our services for the weekend. And so I was like, man, Lord, what am I going to talk about? And the Lord was just like, talk about me, what you and just Juby received. And I remember just being there in the huddle and, of course, getting emotional talking about it, because I'm thinking I'm grateful for our 10 years that we've had. And it, again, be clear, it has sucked. The last 7 months of 2024 was not just one of the hardest years. It arguably could have been the hardest year of our life.
Yeah.
And even in that, the Lord still had us covered.
Yeah.
And here's the reality. It's true for you too. I don't know what you're walking through right now. I don't know what season of hardship. Maybe you're in a great season. Maybe you've had a season of increase. Maybe you've had a season of promotion. Seasons of success and increase, as well as suffering and trials, has a way of forgetting that the Lord was with you the whole time. Mm. And to your point, you're absolutely right. Like, as hard as it was, I can honestly say there was never a moment where I was like, where are you, God? By the way, if you have that moment, it's totally fine. Like, the Lord can take that.
Yeah.
God is not sitting there going.
In fact, be as honest about it as possible.
Yeah. He's not going, oh, my me, I don't know what to do with your vulnerability and, your questions. All right. So if you having one of those moments, that's fine. Like, the Lord can take that. I'm just thankful that as we've just grown in our relationship with the Lord, my question was like, Lord, where do you have me in this? Yeah. It was more of that. It wasn't so much, where are you? It's like, where do you want me to go in this? And I remember even when I asked God, it was the first week of October. I remember I was driving in my car. It was actually on my way back.
The old one.
Yeah. I was on my way back the same day I had the accident. I remember asking the Lord, I said, God, why won't you release me from this? I remember just asking that.
I thought your accident was in November.
You're right. Okay.
Yeah.
So it was a month before then. Mm-hmm. You're right. I remember just asking him, why won't you release me from this? And I remember him just going, because I still trust you with it.
Yeah.
And
what an honor.
100%. And when I heard it, it gave me permission to, like, okay, let me take the reins now.
Yeah.
And I'm still discerning, like, what that looks like to lead that well and steward that well. Because and here's the thing about God's word too, is that even when he gives you a word, there's still a time limit. Mm-hmm. Like it's at we're called right now, this day. That's going to change at some point, and until it does, I just want to steward and drive the ship well until he releases me from it. And so the thing, as hard as it was, you're absolutely right. The Lord has covered us, and he's been covered us. But that's true for everybody. But the catch to that is, as true as it is that the Lord has covered you, it's actually only true if you see it and you choose to believe it. Meaning, what are you doing intentionally on a regular basis to press in and to acknowledge the covering of the Lord is not dismissal or removal of the hardship and pain that you have or are walking through.
Yeah.
To acknowledge the covering of the Lord is not to say or ignore and go like, I'm not in pain. I'm not in hardship. I'm not being stressed out. No, it's, I'm stressed out. I'm overwhelmed. This hurts so bad. And God, I only know it's by your covering I'm going to get through it. Mm-hmm. And so I think of that, and I also think of the importance of, we're in the middle of January right now, and I think the date is like the
21st.
18th or 21st. So something I'm thinking of, as we're in the 21st, so at the beginning of the new year, I'm reminded of the importance of why it matters to have a word or a theme that God has given you at the beginning of the year. Because mine was courage. And I wrote, I just reflected on it again 2 weeks ago, but I wrote in my journal and said, remember saying them and said, Mark, I'm going to make you a man of courage, and I'm going to have you confront some hard things this year. Mm-hmm. That was January 1st of 2024. January 1st.
Yeah.
Is when I wrote that. And so I say all that to say, had I not had that word, it would have been very easy for me to opt out of courageous moments. I remember literally having moments where I looked at when something would pop up and I was just like, I really don't want to do this right now. And I felt the Holy Spirit just go, remember the word, courage. And when the Lord gives you a word, it's not him zapping a characteristic into you. He's going to give you a word or a theme, and he's going to give you opportunities to say yes to it, or he's going to give you opportunities to say no to it.
Yeah.
And that's on you.
Yeah.
And so I'm also just reminded more than ever the importance of having a theme or a word or a phrase that God has given you, because when, not if, when the trials and hardship comes, in the scripture, and literally Jesus says to Peter, he says, Satan has come to test you. And my prayer for you is not that you won't be tested. He says, my prayer for you is that your faith won't fail.
Yeah.
Like it's gonna happen, guys.
Yeah.
And so the reminder of pressing in to the Lord, you can't afford not to. And if you don't know what that is, don't freak out. Don't panic. That just means it's your start point. I don't care when you're listening to this. I don't care if it's May, July, August. Like, it is not too late to get a phrase or a theme or a word from the Lord. And so slow down, take a step back and go, Lord, what is, based off of where I've been, where I'm at, where you're taking me, what is the thing you want to put in me? Yeah. What is the thing you want me to teach, that you want to teach me? And the reason why you ask that is because what he's asked to say is going to be very different from what you would want to do. And so you're absolutely right, sweetheart. As hard as it was, you just saw the Lord's presence laced throughout every single situation.
Yeah.
And knowing that the Lord covers you, but you have to choose to see that, to believe that, as well as having a word, really just helped me to press in and lean in. And so as hard as it was, I also already recognized the growth that I've experienced since then. I see it in myself. I see it in you. I see it in our team, our staff. I see it in our volunteers. I see it in our leaders. I'm proud of us. We didn't get everything right. Of course not. I would never say that. We're still learning. We're still growing. But I'm proud of the people that I serve with. I'm proud of the people that I get to pastor with, that I get to pastor, and I get to do life with. What a privilege.
Yeah.
Like, it's such a cliche statement, but it really is. It really is a privilege, to know that the Lord gives all of his people a supernatural strength to endure the season that he's called them to. Mm-hmm. And what a gift to a release when the Lord gives us as well. Because when he releases us, here's what the Lord says. If he's released you, here's what God is also saying. Well done, good and faithful. And if he hasn't released you, stay faithful. So, yeah.
So, yeah, that's where we've been. How about you guys? What's going on?
Oh, man.
Yeah. Our 1.5 month break was almost a 1 year break.
Yeah.
But we're better for it.
We are.
Yeah, we're better for it.
For sure. 100%. Man, we're so thankful for you guys, and we're sorry that we just kind of ghosted y'all.
Thanks to the one person that checked up on us. But so many of you guys were nice.
Hey, but for real, give us a look up on Instagram. Her handle's @Juby, not Judy. Mine is @Mark K. Benton too. And also, we have our podcast website where you can send voicemails, but like DM us, ask us questions, all that good
I was
stuff.
going to say, ask him questions because I am barely on Instagram at this point.
Yeah, you kind of taking a little break.
Yeah, so you can CC me a copy of the question, but there's a good chance I may not get back in the normal business hours.
But for real, I would love to hear. I love interacting with people. So, any questions or topics or things you guys want to talk about, I actually still have copies and notes of things people mentioned before. So we're going to get there. We're actually going to do one on transition because that's come up a lot, how we transition and navigate,
We're talking about from like one place to another. That's the only transition we know how to do.
Yeah. What else would it be? Did I miss it?
Yeah, it's
Is
okay.
this my Drax moment?
It's okay. Okay. It's okay.
Oh man, but seriously, we're back. We're excited. We got some guests too coming on. We're super pumped about that.
Yeah, we are.
It's gonna be really, really good. But anyways, we love you guys so very much. Thank you for rocking with us. We are back. We excited, and holla at us. And we'll see you guys.
Yeah.
Next time.
Peace out.